Candace, oh boy, that is an unflattering opening frame. She looks kind of like an alien a little bit here. But you know what? We're going to focus on the arguments made. This video now has 2 million views, and it was posted yesterday. I have not watched it. The title is, I do not support George Floyd, here's why. That's a very interesting title. I do not support George... Oh yeah, 30 million plus on Facebook. Little weird. What do you mean, I do not support George Floyd? I'm not sure what that means. You could say, I don't support Antifa, or BLM, or the protests, but George Floyd is dead. Is she saying she's happy he's dead? Maybe. It's Candace Owens.
Hello, Facebook family. I have decided to do this video. It has been weighing very heavily on my heart and on my mind as well. And it was something that I wanted to say early on, but there were so many emotions and so much pressure for me to go with the popular opinion about who George Floyd was. And sometimes it can be difficult when there are just so many
Really weird start. Nobody's talking about who George Floyd was. Nobody is talking about that. No, it doesn't matter who George Floyd was. The only thing of relevance to this is the fact that he was murdered by the police and the degree to which the police were justified in their actions, which nobody seems to believe they were. His character is not relevant, except, and I have a feeling this is exactly what this is going to turn into, he was no angel. Even in the most obvious and severe instance of police brutality, still we will obfuscate the morality of the question by asking ourselves, well, he did smoke weed back in 2009. Did the police really do something wrong by killing him? We'll see how that goes.
External pressures to say what you believe, and this was an instance where I felt like my silence would have been better in the beginning, but the more that I think about it,
the more I think about it, your silence might have continued to be a good idea.
Realize that we are being sold a lot of lies, and
such as
at the detriment to the Black community, at the detriment to the white community, and
such
at
as
the detriment to America as a whole. So I want to come out and say that I do not support George Floyd and the media depiction of him as a martyr for Black America.
Wait. The media depiction of him as a so George Floyd is by definition a martyr. That's not a media depiction. He has been made a martyr. That's just a fact of what has happened. His death has made him a martyr. That's not a depiction. That's just a thing that's happened. He died. He's Black and he died because of the police. Like that's just a thing that happened. It's not like Hollywood where yes, well, no, it's just a thing that happened.
I'm going to explain why, and I hope that some of you guys will understand where I'm coming from. I have spent a considerable amount of time reading a lot of Black authors that I think are some of the most brilliant Black Americans breathing. Walter Williams, Shelby Steele, Thomas Sowell. And I recently came across something that was an idea that was planted into my head by Shelby Steele, and it has been something that I cannot forget. It is something that will stick with me for the rest of my life. And it is something that I hope for the Black Americans that are watching will stick with you for the rest of your life. Shelby Steele said that the Black community is unique from other communities. Our culture is unique from other communities because we are the only community that caters to the bottom denominator of our society. Now, let me explain what that means.
What does that mean? Does anyone know anything about the author to whom she is referring? Caters to the bottom denominator. That's a very weird. What does that mean exactly? Caters to, is like the Black community will pander to the thugs or something like that? Is that what we're getting? Like the Black community is the only community that will bend over backwards to defend the worst element. Well, whites in America bend over backwards to defend the police, the worst gang of them all. So
It means to say that not every Black American is a criminal, not every Black American is committing crimes, but we are unique in that we are the only people that fight and scream and demand support and justice for the people in our community that are up to no good.
Yeah. Justice. Of course. Yeah. Justice for people who are arrested. No shit. Yeah. Of course. That's what justice means. You should get justice for every... Wait, so if a person commits a crime, you just abandon... Like, you're just like, oh, I don't care if they get raped, murdered, I don't give a fuck. Like, they've committed a crime. No justice for them. Justice is unique as a concept because it is virtuous to apply justice to every aspect of our society. Who could disagree with that? Who would make the argument we should be unjust towards criminals? Justice isn't the same as saying, well, just let these people back on the street. Justice is, let's treat them fairly. And that's the argument of the Black community, that they ain't been treated fairly.
You would be hard-pressed to find, a Jewish person who has spent 5 stints in prison, who commits a crime and dies while committing a crime, and that the Jewish people champion and demand justice for. Actually,
if a Jewish person was repeatedly arrested and then let out and then died in a hate crime related incident, or if Jewish people were disproportionately arrested and beat up, or if the Jewish people in a given neighborhood were disproportionately policed and they like a cop had like a knee on the back of their neck while saying like, oh, you don't like this goy knee, do you? Huh? I actually think the Jewish people would be would actually be a little bit upset about that. My personal opinion. Personally, I do believe that, actually. We should demand justice for everyone in our community at all points. And hey, if you're interested in a little bit of historical precedent, and I know Candace isn't, there were Jewish criminals in Germany and in Poland at the time, during, and a little bit before the Holocaust. Believe it or not, Jewish people, being people, did commit some crimes. And this is going to be astonishing to you. This is very exciting. It turns out the Jewish community didn't just go like, oh, you can take those ones away. Oh, we don't care what happens to those ones, Oh, that guy, he broke into a car. Like, oh, well, you can take him away. They all looked out for each other because, as it turns out, it doesn't matter what crimes you commit. The state should not disproportionately persecute you for your race, gender, religious identity, ethnicity, income, or anything.
You will be hard-pressed to find this in white America. You'll be hard-pressed to...
No, you will not.
...find this even in Latino America.
No, you will not. One of the biggest advocate components of Latin America is defending undocumented immigrants, who are by definition people who are here after having done something, after violating an ordinance at the very least, like 100%. Every community, everyone in this country should have a shared interest in justice for every other member of this community.
There is a person that is spent multiple times in prison. You are not going to see a bunch of Latinos coming out demanding justice for this person, even if...
Yes, if they died of police brutality, yes. Notice how she hasn't said police brutality? She's just saying, like, they die. As though George Floyd died in, like, the natural committing of whatever crime he was doing. That's the implication she's saying. That George Floyd was, like, robbing a bank and he got shot in the process. In which case, I imagine people probably wouldn't defend George Floyd or eulogize him in his death because he died during a bank robbery.
And I want to be very clear, what I'm saying is not any defense for Derek Chauvin. I hope Derek Chauvin gets the justice that he deserves to be, implemented upon him, and that the family of George Floyd deserves justice for the way that...
Who is TA? Why do people keep saying TA debate?
He died, but I also am not going to accept the narrative that this is the best the Black community has to offer.
Who the What the fuck are you talking about? What? Nobody's making the claim that George Floyd is the best of anything. Nobody except weirdos like you who are trying to do this he was no angel bullshit every single fucking time a Black Death gets media attention pay any mind to his character. I don't give a fuck who George Floyd was. He was killed by police in an unjustified manner. His city is one in which black people are disproportionately arrested, disproportionately sentenced, disproportionately policed. There is not a single goddamn part of that that bears any relevance with regards to his personal character. I don't care if he was a serial rapist. He didn't get killed while raping. He got killed because of some check bouncing bullshit, and he died in an unjustified manner. It doesn't matter who he was. It matters that he was killed.
For whatever reason, it has become fashionable over the last 5 or 6 years for us to turn criminals into heroes overnight. And it is
this has nothing to do with them being heroes. Same old bullshit. Fucking Aunt Tom bullshit. Every single goddamn time. We're turning these boys into heroes. Michael Brown was no angel, you know. Exact same bullshit every single fucking time. Nobody's saying these people are heroes, only that their deaths were unjustified.
Something that I find to be despicable, and it is something that I refuse to stand by any longer, and I am not going to play a part in it, no matter how much pressure comes from Black liberals and Black conservatives as some token of people wanting you to believe that this is the only way you can be Black, is you have to say this was wrong, and that
the unjustified murder of a person by police is wrong. Yes. Notice how she's saying she's not defending the police officer, but she's also saying that you don't have to believe it was wrong. Really interesting hypocrisy there. So I'm not saying that what the police officer did was right. I'm not defending the police officer, but also I just want black people to know you don't have to believe it was wrong. Well, I mean, the autopsy revealed it was a homicide. Those guys have been arrested. They're being charged. We'll see how that goes. Seems pretty wrong to me.
You know, this person was amazing. I won't do that. George Floyd was not an amazing person. And
nobody cares.
As soon as this video hit the internet, I did just basic searches. Everyone jumped on it and was looking at the police officer, and everyone agrees that the police officer was wrong, and the police officer has been arrested.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with his character. Nothing whatsoever.
That is not the reason I'm not discussing that, is because that is not something that has been misconstrued in the media. He has been turned into...
So she's not discussing the actual relevant part, the police brutality, the murder, the arrest, the trial, because she's like, whatever, the media's covering that. But she really needs to make sure everyone knows is that George Floyd was no angel. That's where she draws the line. 40 million views on Facebook. This is the conservative narrative now. And she's the ultimate Aunt Tom. She's a pretty non-threatening looking black woman here to coo the same racist bullshit people like Glenn Beck have been screaming into their radio mics for decades, except this time it's coming from her, which means it's okay to believe this. It's not racist. There's nothing racially charged about rushing to your computer screens every time a black person is murdered by the police to dig up anything going on in their past, to make sure that he did anything wrong so you can post hoc justify his execution by the state.
The devil that he is, and there is no reason for us to harp.
The devil?
He has been turned into the devil that he is, and there is no reason for us to harp on that any longer, because white Americans are not uplifting Derek Chauvin as a victim or pretending that he's an amazing human being.
Whoa, there are a fuck ton of people who are defending Derek Chauvin. I was on Twitter just today, and I saw, oh man, who was the person who deleted that tweet? Was it Tim Pool? Was it Tim Pool or Ian Miles Chong? Oh yeah, Ian Miles Chong was on Twitter. I'm pretty sure he deleted this. And he said, so George Floyd just had coronavirus and he just quickly died from corona by having the knee placed on the back of his neck. Ian Miles Chong is like a subhuman piece of shit, by the way. Unironically. Like, that's how it worked. Like, he had corona, but then the corona was accelerated by the knee on the back of his neck. I really want you to think about that. Imagine, like, I have coronavirus and I go out to protest and I get shot 19 times in the chest, and then people online go like, well, let me get this straight. One of those bullets entered his lungs. It seems like the foreign particles exacerbated the development of coronavirus. So you'd say he died from coronavirus, probably, right? He died of the Rona, right? I don't think police brutality. I mean, maybe it slightly exacerbated things, but yeah. Yeah, he died of lack of oxygen. He choked. He tripped. Same narrative every fucking time with these people.
But George Floyd is being uplifted as an amazing human being.
No, but I'm not seeing anyone saying that. I'm a far leftist, Everyone who I see online is talking with defense of George Floyd. I don't see anyone talking about his character because his character is irrelevant. It has nothing to do with the legitimacy of the murder.
And for those of you who have not yet seen the clips and did not pursue or wait for more clips to come out, first and foremost, George Floyd at the time of his arrest was high on fentanyl and he was high on methamphetamine. This came back in both of his autopsy reports.
And
if you pursue the 911 transcript, you can see the person describing somebody who is out of their mind high, and which is what made the person fearful because he tried to use a bill that I guess was a fake bill to purchase something, and then he was outside acting weird, and they
acting weird. This is what, if one of you guys dies from the police and it becomes publicized, this is what conservatives will say. Well, he was acting weird. He gave like a bad check. He's being kind of weird.
In their police call said that this person was obviously distorted and on drugs.
Okay.
When he is put into handcuffs and is put against the wall, a baggie of what looks to be like cocaine or...
I just want you guys to know, I don't know if anything she's saying right now is bullshit. I know drugs were found in his system due to the autopsy. Even if everything she's saying is true, it does not matter. It does not matter. It is literally irrelevant.
It's white. It's a white baggie that he drops onto the floor that you can see in an image. If you look up the clip,
okay.
The media is refusing to circulate it. You can find it on Twitter.
Okay.
If you use DuckDuckGo and look up George Floyd baggie, you can watch the clip yourself with your own eyes.
Okay.
He had drugs on him at the time of his arrest.
Okay.
Now, barring all of that, nobody thinks that he should have died during this arrest, but what I find despicable to be is that everyone is pretending that this man lived a heroic lifestyle.
Nobody's talking about that. How can you, it's this easy to manufacture a narrative, dude. 40 million views on Facebook. This bitch just goes on here and it's like, one thing I've really noticed is that, people are trying to use George Floyd's death to say all white people are bad. They're all rioting. Those are the protests. They're saying all white people are bad. And I'm here to tell you, if you're black, you don't have to believe that. That's not true. There are good white people. People of all races are good. 40 trillion views. Everyone across the entire... Like, wow, you're right. A lot of people on the left are saying all white people are bad. Like, holy shit. You can manufacture any narrative. Any narrative. How'd this bitch get so popular?
He didn't, and I want to talk about what his lifestyle was leading up to this moment and why I refuse to accept the narrative.
Holy shit, this whole fucking video was literally just he was no angeling. That's the whole video. 18 minutes. If Candace Owens ever dies, I sincerely hope we're able to find a lot of shit we can make a reciprocal video on. A lot of shit. You could, if you want to, you could find bad shit on anyone. Oh, she was no angel. That's true. That's true. Candace Owens was no angel. Candace Owens was a grifter who extorted money out of an organization by playing the race card, and then was known to commit multiple falsehoods, lying and propagandizing frequently on social media platforms after she moved to the right after receiving a significant, significant funding from far-right, PAC groups and dark money that came from billionaires. She was no angel. We could say that she was a propagandist responsible in large part for propagating the racial antagonism core to America's internal discourse far into the 21st century. She was no angel. I mean, Candace Owens acknowledged, herself that she was a grifter and didn't really have much of an emotional attachment to any of her beliefs. She basically just followed the money. So honestly, like this death, I'm not saying her death was justified. I'm not saying that her death was okay. I'm only saying, like, I'm sick of this narrative that, she didn't kind of have it coming. Plus, she's white. Ha ha! Plus, she's white, baby. She is white. It's true.
That this person is a martyr or should be lifted up in the black community, and that we should be buying t-shirts with his name on it, okay? So
you don't buy t-shirts with his name on it because he was a good person. You buy t-shirts with his name on it because he's a symbol of resisting police brutality.
here we have, first and foremost, let's start from the bottom of his record.
She has actual papers next to her. She physically assembled documents.
And by the way, I am not saying that if you have a record, you don't deserve a second chance. I think people get arrested.
That is exactly what you're saying. You can't say you're not saying that, but when that's the purpose of your video. That's literally what you're doing here. Nobody's talking about the moral character of George Floyd.
And some people can serve time in prison, and I believe in second chances, but I do draw the line when it comes to second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth chances.
Okay.
Of cocaine on him again, and instructed one of his
drugs
to believe that this person suddenly became an exemplary character, but happened to be high on fentanyl. And
nobody believed. That's the whole video. Did I just see a statistic?
And black people represent just 13% of the population. It doesn't matter what percentage of the population you represent. It matters what percentage of the violent criminal community you represent. And unfortunately, black community commits a disproportionate amount of crimes compared to the white community. Let me tell you, 6% of the population, right? Black men.
That's black men. Yeah, black men.
6% of the population account for 44% of all murders in this country, according to 2018 statistics. That is what you call a gap. And yet white people who represent 60% of the population, we represent 13, black men are 6%, only represent 50% of all the murders, right?
I like how this video was supposed to be about how George Floyd wasn't a good person, and I skip ahead like 8 minutes, and now we're just listening to white supremacist arguments. I can't believe I have to repeat this, but first of all, it doesn't make much sense to select for black men because men disproportionately commit violent crimes across the board. If we eliminated all men from society, violent crimes would plummet to like less than 1/10 of what they are now. So we'll stick to just the black population rather than black men, because otherwise we would have to notice how she chose black men, but she also chose white people, including the much less comparatively violent white women in the statistic to make the disparity look even more severe. Just a nice little bit of dishonesty, the kind of thing you would engage in if you were specifically interested in making black people look violent. Second of all, that data is not even actually accurate. Those are for arrests, not convictions. Since we know for a fact that black people are massively disproportionately arrested over white people, it doesn't really make much sense to use that as an indicator of their relative levels of criminality. If we go by conviction rates, it's probably a little bit closer to 13 to 36%. And then if you control for socioeconomic status, those numbers get flown down even closer because it turns out black people are on average much poorer than white people. And then if you take a look at that and control for environment, considering the fact that, for example, black people are much less likely to have both parents, black people are much less likely to have had good education, black people are much less likely to have had access to good business opportunities after they're old enough to work, and then, wow, those numbers start to get really close to each other. But then, if you control for specific groups of blacks that are responsible for the vast amount of violent crime that comes out of that racial community, that is to say, crime related to gang warfare, which pertains to the drug war in this country, if you get rid of that as well, meaning we're actually just looking at race as a comparison and not a bunch of conflating socioeconomic factors, we achieve parity. Or very close to parity. Black people are still subject to racism, which does lend itself towards a lot of harmful conditions socioeconomically. You can't actually control for everything perfectly. Crime studies and criminology are very, very difficult fields of studies for those reasons. And this is a fact. And this is, by the way, the reason why sociologists and criminologists tend to be very left-leaning. You don't actually see a bunch of criminologists and criminal justice studies majors coming out of university talking about how, like, we just need to be harder on crime, like, black communities got bad culture. They don't really do that. And there's a reason for that. Because if you're educated on these subjects, you recognize that the disparity can be chalked up far more to conditions comorbid with the long-term oppression of black people than the actual state of their blackness or their culture, whatever nebulous bullshit that means. I don't know if you've noticed recently all that gangsta rap that encourages people to be mean to their parents and do drugs or whatever. You know where that's most popular? Really, I want you guys to ask. Where is that most popular? The gangsta rap. Where is that really hippin' and hoppin'? Because let me tell you, it's not fucking black people, it's white people in the suburbs. Weird. And you know who's commissioning that music from the gangsta rap artists? White production executives. Black people and their art being commodified from blacks to sell to whites. Not the first time it's happened, believe it or not. If you follow the history of music, this would actually be the millionth time that it's happened. So black culture clearly isn't the answer here because it's being, in large part, commissioned by white people and consumed by white people. If black culture and the hippin' and hoppin' music makes people violent, why the fuck aren't all these white kids in the suburbs freaking out? I guess they do a lot of school shootings. Maybe we can do some research on that. The issue is that while all of this may be, this is everything I've said so far, this isn't like sneaky debate tactics. This is a very logical understanding, a very straightforward understanding of the way in which our crime system works. I don't know who TA is, but you can email me. It's a very, very, very straightforward understanding of how our system works. But when people like Aunt Tom Candace Owens over here just start going like, there's a problem in the black community, 1350, what she's doing is reinforce, without any sociological analysis, what she's doing is reaffirming to our audience that there's something wrong with black people. Black people. Not black socioeconomic circumstances, not black cultural conditions, black people. That is why people say 1350. Because you'll notice, and I guarantee you, this is going to be the case here, they don't suggest socioeconomic solutions after saying 1350. You guys have been online for a while. You ever seen that? Has someone ever said 1350? Now here's what I think we can do to fix that. If we invest in the educational centers in these areas, we can. Have you ever seen somebody do that? Ever in your life? Nope. They say 1350, they smirk, and they walk away. They don't want solutions because they're not trying to point out this problem to find a solution. They're pointing it out to reinforce the perceived inferiority of black people. And Candace Owens, a wealthy grifter who admits she has no emotional tie to her positions, caters to this collection of white supremacists because Candace Owens is, and she looks kind of the part right now, a little bit like a Halloween mask, a subhuman monster, a piece of shit who feeds on the racial disparities in this country and profits from the suffering, who bolsters through her skin tone the perspectives of people who would see her put into the dirt. And she's fine, because she's got the money and she's on the right side. The term for this, she invoked the Jews before I did. The term for this, if I remember correctly, was Judenrat. Wasn't that it? Back during the Holocaust? The good Jews, the ones who worked with the Nazi state to turn in their pals so they could live a little while longer, the ones who would carry the corpses to the crematorium so they could be given slightly more bread the next day. People like this have existed throughout history, but not many of them get to make as much money as Candace has.
That makes no sense. That makes no sense. A 6-point variation in a community where we are extreme minorities. We commit 50% of all violent offenses, evenly split, and we're only 13% of the population, okay? So we have a lot more encounters with police officers. And don't say the police officers are coming around because we're black. I'm talking about violent criminals. I'm talking about murder. 44% of murders, okay?
Notice how she's not bringing up any solutions. She's just saying it. She's just throwing it out there. Imagine hating your own race. Well, she doesn't actually hate her own race. I don't actually think that Candace Owens hates black people. I think Candace Owens just knows the best paychecks come from white supremacists.
I want to talk about real statistics. The police officers have way more to be fearful of in the black community than the other way around, okay? We commit, on average, a police officer is 18 and a half times more likely to be killed by a black person than the other way around, okay? So this entire...
I want to see data on that. 18 and a half times more likely for a cop to be killed by a black person than the other way around. Number of people shot to death by the police in the United States from 2017 to 2020 by race. Okay. For black folks, it looks like we're getting about 200 a year. So if there's 18 times more likely, that would mean that how many police officers would have to die to black people every year? About a little bit less than 4,000. An average of 85 law enforcement officers were feloniously killed per year. 85 law enforcement officers per year, and not just by black people. A total of 106 during 2017. Where did she get this data from? Where did she get this data from? Even if we were to be charitable and say about 100 police officers lose their lives on duty every year, because we're only tracking police officers who die on duty, not police officers who choke to death on a fucking donut. About 100 of them die every year, but about 200 black men are shot by the police every year. And that's just 100 police officers, not even just by race. But there are more black than police? Yeah, no shit. But then you could do the same stat with any racial group. If there are more black men than police, then you could do the same shit with any racial group, because obviously the numbers will be disproportionate. 5 statistics you need to know about cops killing blacks. From the Daily Wire. My favorite. Cops killed twice as many whites as blacks in 2015. But there are more but there are more than twice as many white people than black people, so that's still disproportionate. More whites and Hispanics die from police homicides than blacks. That's literally the exact same stat as up here, except rephrased. No shit, black people are a minority in the community. The Post data does show that unarmed black men are more likely to die by the gun of a cop than an unarmed white man, but this does not tell the whole story. Yeah, okay, so you've got some other weird data that you think conflates that. Black and Hispanic police officers are more likely to fire a gun at blacks than white officers. Yeah, no shit, because black and Hispanic officers are more common in areas that have a high black population. And here we go. This is insane, by the way. How I can just read these titles and know how they're wrong. Blacks are more likely to kill cops than be killed by cops. This is according to FBI data, which also found that 40% of cop killers are black. According to MacDonald, the police officer is 18.5 times more likely to be killed by a black than a cop killing an unarmed black person. Wait, how? If 40% of cop killers are black, that means about 40 police officers would have died to black people every single year. If about 100 cops die every year, on average it's actually around 80, and 40% of them are black, that would mean that 40%, that about 40 cops die to black people every year, but 200 black men die to there's no way. There's absolutely no way. Yeah, Google cops 40% to learn more about this. There is literally no way. This is blatantly incorrect. There's a reason why we have this unrelated piece of information, and then they just say, according to MacDonald. Like, okay, can I get the data on that, maybe? Any methodology? So she's just repeating, like, presumably a lie from a Daily Wire article. Okay, just wanted to make sure. I suspected that everything that she just said was dishonest, but I wanted to confirm, just wanted to make sure. The math just does not add up in her favor. Are you looking at unarmed black men or total blacks killed by cops? That might be why, Vosh. It looks like about the number here. How many unarmed black men die a year to police? It looks like about half of the black men who die from police shootings were unarmed at the time. So about half were armed and about half were unarmed. But then, we're not even close to discussing the actual extent of abuse done to black people by the police. What about people who die during incarceration? What about people who die in prison due to mistreatment? Like, this isn't even the totality of the data. There's no justification for this false data point that she has thrown out. Hey, I don't know normally like edit anything after I'm done making the video, but it can be really, really difficult to fact check data live. And I didn't do the best job with the 18.5 times statistic, the one where it says a cop is 18.5 times more likely to be killed by a black man than a black man is to be killed by a cop. However, immediately after stream, I was given an article on that exact data point. It is horribly abused. It's just wrong. It's factually incorrect. It is data abuse of the worst possible order. It is incredibly irresponsible, and it was made with a racial bias. I found an excellent article that explains why, and using the exact same data manipulation, they were able to find that for white people, a police officer is 165 times more likely to be killed by a white man than an unarmed white man is to be killed by a cop. 165 times. So if you fuck with data, you can get any answer. Dishonest little fucking cunt.
Narrative is complete smoke and mirrors. It's all made up. It's just election fodder. It's white versus black because it's an election year.
There's no race war going on right now. The BLM protesters are not protesting against white people. There are white protesters and black cops. This is not a race war. You want it to be a race war because that makes it look better for you.
Not because black Americans are suffering at the hands of police officers more than white Americans. Do some police officers do the wrong thing? Yes. I don't think there's anybody in the world who has not encountered a police officer and thought this person is an absolute jerk who is power tripping, whether you are black or white. We know they exist. And we know they're always going to exist, by the way, because they're human beings. And sometimes human beings suck. In fact, if you...
As the reductive analysis of the conservative. Yeah, sometimes they're bad because people are bad. Very, very convincing rebuttal right there. Very good.
If you want to attack a community for accidental slayings or brutality, did you know that doctors accidentally kill 250,000 people every year because of mistakes?
Do they accidentally kill people due to racial bias, or do they accidentally kill people because surgeries are extremely difficult and there's never a guarantee of them succeeding? Very big brain. So a police officer murdering a person for no reason is exactly the same as a surgeon attempting a risky operation and the patient dying during the surgery.
Do you know there's been doctors that have been arrested for being serial killers that just were killing people because they wanted to? Do we...
Well, good thing individual serial killers aren't acting with the endorsement of the state the way police officers are. Are they? I'm so tired of the conservative arguments, dude. I'm so exhausted by them. They're so stupid. Every single one of them is so fucking stupid. There's no logic to them. Just every every conceivable fucking bit you can throw out, anything to get any dumb fuck argument you can get to maybe sway a couple of people. Doesn't need to be consistent, true, logical. It doesn't even need to be a sound argument. The conclusion doesn't even need to follow from the premises. They'll just say it. It's just because their audience, that's the level they're at.
Protest and boycott doctors? Do we assume all... I mean, it's embarrassing. We are embarrassing in that...
I completely agree. I know she's talking about black people, and holy fuck, the level of Uncle Tomness right here. We blacks are so embarrassing. We're embarrassing. But I'll pretend she's talking about conservatives here.
Regard to scale to do the right thing, to be upstanding citizens. That is the call to action that I have for Black America with Brexit. Why do we...
Yep, and blaming the black community here. Yep.
Fulfilling this narrative. What do you think the perception of us, by the way, is on the outside? You ever look at the comments?
The majority of the people in America support the protests. 76% of Americans, including 71% of white people, called racism and discrimination a big problem in the US. That's a 26 percentage point spike since 2015, an insane jump in public support. In a poll, 57% of Americans said demonstrators' anger was fully justified, and 21% additionally said it was somewhat justified, meaning that condemnation of the riots is limited to an amount of people which is at most 22% of the population. And you know where that 22% is coming from, Candace Owens? Your fucking comment section. Your sycophants, your desperate little simps who lap up every racist fucking thing you say because they like hearing it from someone who's got a skin tone darker than theirs. That's where it's coming from. It is not coming from the average American. The average average American, even most Republicans, I would be willing to wager, recognize there is something wrong with this country, recognize that the protests can be justified, or in fact are justified. You are the one who is inciting this condemnation of the black community. You are the one who is responsible in large part, to the greatest extent any one media figure can be, at least, to propagating this narrative that there's a problem in the black community that the blacks need to fix and they shouldn't be protesting till they get their shit together. You are the one selling them out. You have your knee on their neck. If it weren't for people like you, these numbers would be even higher.
Ever go into like an anonymous blog and see what people say? Oh, just black people being black people. I see those racist comments.
Yeah, where do you think they're coming from, bitch? You think they're coming from our comment sections? You think they're coming from Democrats? You think they're coming from people on our side? Who do you think they're coming from? Who?
Comments, oh, just black people gotta riot, black people gotta be black people, you know how they are. Oh, just black people being ignorant. That is the perception. When people get to be anonymous and talk about us, that's what they think about us.
Yeah,
right?
And that's what I think about you. I think you're kind of fucking stupid. I don't think it has anything to do with your blackness, mind you. I don't think this is a racial condemnation. But yeah, I think you're kind of like pathetic. Like, and you probably have like some really weird like self-esteem issues that you're acting out. I hope your grifter bucks have bought you a comfortable bed, because I imagine it's the only way you could possibly sleep at night. And I do take some perverse satisfaction from knowing that no matter how good of a black girl you are to these people, the people who watch you and consume your content will only ever think of you as one of the good ones. They'll only ever think of you as one of the ones who managed to overcome your inferior genetics. A large portion of your community probably thinks of you as just like one of the, maybe an aberrant deviation from the general inferiority of the blacks, and that's going to be your life forever. That's not the life of black folk on my side, because the black folk on my side live lives of comfort knowing that their comrades recognize that they are the victims of systemic injustice. But that's not the community you've chosen. So just like Blair White gets to spend her entire life being thought of as one of the good ones by her community, just like Milo Yiannopoulos got to be one of the good ones of the gays until he was outed as a pedophile, and just like you get to be one of the good ones from your community, you will never rise above the level of tepid acceptance from people who think you're an outlier to your group. But I guess that's enough for some people.